The Predators get enlisted. Here's a look at the new NECA toys, the Predator Emissary Predator. Predators have been genetically evolving themselves to be stronger, smarter, and more lethal than ever before. When a young boy accidentally activates a mysterious alien device and becomes the target of these enhanced predators, only his father and the most unlikely ragtag band of ex-military agents can save him and the human race from obliteration. Before we go ahead and do anything else, I'm going to first measure off how tall the Emissary Predator is. So taking my very trusty tape measure and taking it right to the very top of his head, we know according to the readout here that the figure stands rather impressively at 9 inches in height. That's pretty tall. Switching that over to centimeters, we'll do that right now. You're looking at 22.8, about 23 centimeters in height. Why don't we go ahead and start this review by having a look at the various accessories that come included with the Emissary Predator. First and foremost, you get yourself a modified M240 machine gun. One thing I really like about this is I don't think this has ever been utilized by NECA before, so it's likely a brand new sculpt. What's neat about it, though, is that the machine gun actually has a housing bag in which the additional round of ammunition is sitting inside of. Again, I've not seen something like this before. A really neat looking accessory. Even if, again, I don't end up displaying it necessarily with Emissary Predator, it's such a cool looking gun. I'll probably end up using it maybe for something else, maybe like a John Rambo. That might be interesting enough. The machine gun actually has some nice, decent silver paint work done to it, but it's not overly shiny. It's not bright. They've kept it, the tones down dark enough that it looks like real-world applicated, actual tech, as opposed to sometimes when these machine guns, or really any weapons, get included with these figures, sometimes the coloring is so bright on it, it doesn't look realistic. So I have to commend for the fact that they use like a darker silver here, paired, of course, with the black, and paired, of course, with the olive-colored green coloring that has been utilized to the little ammo bag. Now, the thing about it, though, is you can kind of see it's not attached to anything. What's only really keeping it in place is the run of bullets that are coming out from the bag. Once that breaks, I would fear that this would likely come right off. I'm certain it would come right off. So you just want to be careful when you are putting this into the emissary's hands. I'll show you guys that in a second. The other thing that comes included with the figure, now I've done some swapping out stuff just to kind of establish that first and foremost. What I did swap out was contained inside the packaging, contained inside the sockets of the forearms. The Emissary Predator did have a pair of closed fists. I've just taken those off and replaced them with the necessary hands for displaying the M240 machine gun. So I just did take these off. Again, swapping out the hands are extremely easy. And it seems like a go-to for many of the Predator figures. You get a pair of extended fingers, like just sticking out fingers, extended dynamic hands. With the Predators, you always tend to get these, and the Emissaries is no different. Other than for the fact that, of course, the paint is so drastically different, and the costumes so drastically different on this one as well, something of which I'll talk about. Obviously, fully extensive in a second. I just want to, again, show you those two hands. Okay, we'll put those to the side. And then the other thing that comes included with the figure is something that does hark back to Fugitive Predator. In fact, it actually looks like a very similar, if not exact same mask. Another possibility, of course, for displaying Emissary is to swap out the head and change it out to this. But again, depending on how you have your figures displayed, if you already have Fugitive Predator out, for example, with, of course, the helmet on, maybe you don't necessarily want to then have Emissary Predator with exactly the same look, of course, from the neck up. Very different from the neck down. Nice detailing, though, on the mask. I'm really, again, a big fan of the Fugitive Predator mask. It is not removable. That's the whole purpose of changing the head sculpt out if you wanted to. but just some really nice details. Little vents on the sides, they're done also in the gold accents. And you've got the gold on the bridge of the nose, or the front breathing part of the nose. And then you've got a little bit of gold right above the eyes there as well. Just, again, really a neat looking head sculpt. Again, if I didn't have necessarily Fugitive Predator out, I probably would just likely display Emissary Predator with this very same similar style of head. Okay, so let's put that to the side. The one thing I did want to show you guys, though, is with the afforded articulation that Emissary has possessed, you can take, let me just go ahead and fit that into his hand here. You can take the modified M240 machine gun, and you can get a full range of motion via the fact that he's got a double hinge on the elbow. So not only can you go John Rambo style, you can angle the machine gun up, or you can also, being that I've swapped this hand out to the other exchanged hands, the kind of clamped hand, and then also the trigger firing hand, you can bend the hands rather quite successfully, and you can have Emissary Predator holding the machine gun. I kind of like the fact that it's angled down, but even in the beginning of this review, I had it angled slightly up, and you can quite easily accommodate that. The only thing, again, I have to stress, though, you just want to be careful of the ammunition bag. Just want to make sure that that doesn't get too hung up in there, and then it ultimately breaks off in the process. So those are the accessories that come included with a rather interesting, unique change of pace for this Emissary Predator. Obviously, a few things that have changed to the figure is the coloring. Of course, the introduction of the violet purple. We'll talk about that in a second. But obviously, the big one, the big spotting out idea, is the fact that this one's wearing true, like, human military outfits. Like, you can see he's wearing a camo military, just regular outfit. Obviously, they would have sized this up for these predators. Now, the thing about the Emissary Predators is that they were two predators from the same clan as the Fugitive and Ultimate Predator. This was sort of, unfortunately, a cut scene from the dismal The Predator film. This is something that they would have defected from the clan and basically just joined up with the human resistance. I think it was about a year or so before the events of the actual Predator film. Up to the point that the film was coming out, we actually got screenshots and I think even video footage of these predators riding on top of tanks, leading to many to speculate how come they're working with the humans. Well, unfortunately, it got cut, and we never really got to see how that would have played out. Maybe we'll eventually see a director's cut. We can only hope it's better, of The Predator, maybe eventually on a DVD or Blu-ray format. But up to the point of just really being a deleted scene, I would imagine that at the time that NECA was producing this figure, it was probably producing it under the assumption that they were going to be producing a figure that actually had screen time, which sadly ended up not being the case. I kind of like the idea that they would have paired with the humans. Probably a possible better idea, much better idea, than that horrible Predator mechanized suit that they got at the very end of the film. Having that open up and having that be the big reveal was just absolutely terrible. I would have much preferred if the twist, the little twist at the end of the movie, was the fact that they actually said that there was a predator killer. And how do you kill another species? Well, you don't necessarily kill them directly. You kill off their food supply or their resource supply. So it would have been so much cooler if that chamber had opened up and brought out several hundreds of facehuggers, totally taking out the entire room of humans, and eventually then leading to the fact that the humans couldn't be harvested for DNA by the Yucha, because unfortunately then they were all infected or either then died or turned into. Of course, you would have had the xenomorph outbreak. So I thought that would have been a good twist. None of any of those ideas, unfortunately my idea, which I thought was much better, just never played out. So unfortunately what we kind of see here is a glimpse of what could have been. And what could have been actually is a really neat looking figure. What I like about it, though, is it's so different than what we normally would see with a regular Predator figure. You kind of know by now what to expect from Predator figures. You get the speckling treatment here of the torsos, the limbs, and then followed by usually a top shoulder harness or armor, and then you also have the plasma caster cannon up at the top. This one doesn't have any of that. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, other than the fact that there are a few tweaks here and there, I mean, looking at it, it really looks like a larger human soldier. Of course, if you were to cover up the head and not look at that aspect of it. It's got some interesting colors there as well. I was really actually tempted immediately getting this out of the box to display the Colonial Marines from Aliens and actually put this guy along with the Colonial Marines. I think that would be just an awesome setting, just to play out the fact that the humans would have acquired some of the predators to aid them in the the obliteration of the xenomorphs, and just the idea of this would be a colonial marine predator. Not, again, something that would have existed, but again, for your own display purposes, you can use your imagination and use that to your heart's content. Some really nice camo printing that has been done all across, from basically really like starting up at the shoulder area there and working its way down. Like, I really do get the vibe of a colonial marine outfit there. Kind of also reminds me of Unisols, the Universal Soldier film starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren. One of my all-time favorite of the Jean-Claude Van Damme films. I know I'm talking about other things, not really talking about the Predator film. Who wants to spend a lot of time talking about the Predator film? We're looking at his feet currently right now, just to show you that there's pegs on the undersides of the feet. We didn't get really too much in depth with the head sculpt, just a spectacular head sculpt. I'm sure it probably used before, although the crest crown does look a little bit different than what we had gotten before, especially like these ridges here. Kind of looks a little bit like a seashell. The coloring is really what makes this stand out, of course, far from the fact that, of course, he's got the camo suit. But like the coloring really does jump on this guy. The lighter color there and a little bit of that kind of brownish transitioning color around the outer edges, and then you've got this spectacular kind of grape Kool-Aid color. Oh, that looks so good. I love the fact that there's a little bit of sheen to it. The light just bounces and reflects and dances right off of it. It just looks spectacular. You still see its eyes, very small pupils, and of course open mandible mouth, exposing his rage for, of course, fighting against the fugitive. Not so much the fugitive predator, but like the assassin predator. Again, just a fantastic looking. I mean, what's neat about this is not necessarily what it represents. What it represents is a scene, unfortunately, cut from a rather bad movie. What it does represent, though, is a really different take on predators. And even though I'm all about, as you probably have seen on this channel, all about covering the various different from NECA Toys, every once in a while it's really nice to get something different, and it's usually like the Kenner inspired stuff that gets my attention the most, but really have caught my attention in a rather nice way looking here at the Emissary Predator. And we're supposedly going to be getting the second one as well, and when eventually that one gets released, I'll do a comparison between the two figures. One thing also is nice is the additional silver here. What this represents on the side, it probably could be a version of their little console that usually would, I think, be on this side, but it's here instead. Probably has some practical purpose, a few buttons and maybe a few weapons housed inside of that. Can't imagine that this is one of those Predator killer suits. It would really make no sense that that would open up around an existing Predator, but you never know, maybe they have some additional armor plating that can come out from that, which again, I think is kind of silly. A nice little bit of light reflecting off of that shine in the skin. Just love that. Love that little bit of extra time and care. The fact that they would put a clear coat over top of that paint really just adds a little bit of extra life and personality to the plastic at hand. Got multiple pockets there on the sides, some pockets there featured on the front. Just again, really a nice overall looking figure. Let's have a look at this guy's articulation. His head rotates back and forth. Sort of is limited by the fact of traditional Predator problems. Large heads, dreadlocks, and in this case, no plasma caster, can usually all be contributors as to why head sculpts don't move as freely as they should. The head does move up and down, it does move left and right, and you can rock it back and forth as well. The shoulders hinge out, but I do find a lot of the things on this figure to be really stiff. I think also too, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to move the arms any further out than that anyways, because you'll see the way the sculpting of the shoulder is, it immediately butts up against the torso piece, and there's really no point past that you can move the arms. Thank goodness though, you can still move the arms up this way, and you can kind of move them out, and still again, if you want to use the machine gun, that's not inhibited or limited by the fact that that shoulder plate is right there. He does have the double hinge on the elbows. He has a rotation also in the forearm, and a rotation also happening in the hands, back and forth. Upper torso ball joint, you'll see this also is a separate piece of plastic, so it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't impede any bit of the motion, as it does have basically articulation in the upper torso, and it has articulation in the mid-torso as well. The legs split out via ball joints. They move forward, they move back, they swivel, not necessarily at the top of the thigh or anywhere in the mid-cut of the thigh, but they swivel down at the knee section. He has a single and double hinge on the knee, hinge back and forth on the foot, and also as well your ankle rocker. So overall, just again, a really neat looking figure. Kind of does beg the question, what could have been, and maybe that's one of the benefits of companies like NECA Toys. Likely they already were well made in advance, known that they were going to be having this scene in the movie. Subsequently, they released the figure based on that scene, and even though that scene got cut out of what we finally would see in the film, at least we can kind of get a glimpse of it via the Emissary figure from the folks over at NECA Toys. When you get to reviewing some figures, after a while it becomes more of the same. There's nothing necessarily wrong with Predator figures. NECA has always continued to churn out great looking figures year after year, but after a while, just due to the way that they're designed in the film and in the comics and source material that they're pulled from, they do after a while feel and look the same. Changing out the heads and changing out the paint schemes can help, but still at the end of the day, it's still always generally the same type of Predator figure. Then every once in a while, I get delightfully surprised. Usually that ends up happening with like the Kenner-inspired NECA figures, but here I've also experienced this with the Emissary Predator also. It's just a really neat looking design. Not really sure how that would have played out in the film. We understand from what we can read up on the interweb that these two Predators have left their clan and have joined up with the Human Resistance a year prior to the events of the Predator film. I always feel like I don't want to add "the" to the beginning of Predator film. Apparently it's supposed to be, or was supposed to be at the very end of the film as kind of a twist, but it does beg the question if they caught the fugitive Predator, or they're aware of the origins and the existence of the assassin Predator, why they did just enlist the help of these two Predators early into the film. Whatever the case may be, and whatever the reasonings for why this scene was cut, unfortunately we can only live then vicariously through this release from the good folks over at NECA Toys. Again, I really do like the design of this. It doesn't have to necessarily play out that this is the same display as all your other The Predator figures. Again, I'm having to add "the" to it. Very well, you could even add this to the ranks and the other members of Dutch's team, or you can include this this really cool designed Predator along with your Colonial Marines, which is probably even something I'm going to consider doing. Really, when it's all said and done at the end of the day, you can really display this any which way you want. After all, you're picking this up for your own collection. Let me know down below, guys, what you think of the Emissary Predator, whether you've managed to pick it up for yourself or really just based on this review. We are still slated to get the second one as well. NECA's pretty good when it comes to that, releasing figures based on properties that never really found their footing in films. It's like companies, for example, like Hot Toys have scrapped designs, even though they built and constructed the prototypes and the molds for it, still have ultimately scrapped their designs. Even though this wasn't necessarily in the film, or sometimes even if the films do badly in theaters and bomb, NECA Toys is always still very loyal to still following to the very end and releasing these figures, which is why we're able to appreciate the Emissary Predator right now. So again, thank you to NECA for still following through on a figure that wasn't in the film, based on a film that was really, really bad. I didn't really like the Predator. Too funny. Too unnecessary humor in it. If you guys want to pick this one up for yourself, some good news is the Emissary Predator should be available now in retail stores and comic book stores, so good luck and happy hunting. I just realized I said happy hunting because it's Predator. Make sure as well you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on your bell notifications to be fully aware of when new videos are coming onto this channel. And speaking of new videos, like I had said a couple of videos ago, got a whole ton of new NECA stuff, so videos for NECA products will be coming soon, so stay tuned to this channel. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next time.